My name is Linda Kellaward. I'm a former Eagle River Elementary School teacher and a looping teacher and a National Board Certified teacher as well. When I began looping, I knew it was good for the children, but I did not have any data to back that up. So I was working on my master's and decided my research question would be, what were the effects of looping on student achievement? There's a lot of literature out there, and I read the literature, and it was all very positive, but I didn't know how it would work on Eagle River Elementary School. So I wanted to research the kids, the children I had worked with, and see if their test results were comparable to non-looping children. There were also 3 other areas that I wanted to examine, and that would be retention and referral rates. Were more children referred because of a looping class or not? What were the student attitudes towards looping? How did they feel about it? And how about parental involvement in a looping situation? I did my research in 2003-2004, and at that time Eagle River Elementary School had 350 children, and it was a SAGE school. There was a grade 1-2 loop and a grade 3-4 loop. I used the Wisconsin Knowledge and Concepts exam as my data collection point with the 4th grade students to obtain the raw scores. Then for the students on their attitudes, I used a questionnaire that I had made up and also a questionnaire for the parents. I collected information from the Director of Pupil Services regarding referral rates. The results of the referral rates were not statistically significant. I took the individual scores for language arts, reading, math, social studies, and science. And I looked at each child's score as to whether they were looping, non-looping, 1 or 2 loops. And there was a composite of all 5 areas of the WKCE was determined for each student. There were 89 in a non-looping, 42 in 1 loop, and 26 in 2 loops. The results were positive on each of the areas, significantly in some, not so significant in others, as the graph can demonstrate. The sampling was small. It was only 1 year, so I decided to expand the research into more years. And I did that with just doing a composite score for 2001, 2002, a composite score for 2002, 2003, and then to 2003, 2004. As you can see by the graph, looping children did indeed score better. So on that, I thought, well, it might be working. Then I did some checking into how students are referred. How many students, special education referrals in grades 3 to 6 were examined, and then how many looping and non-looping referrals were made from September 1999 to 2004. After completion of 2nd grade, each referral was noted as to whether the student was in looping or non-looping. It was a significant difference, but not statistically enough. I didn't include that in my research paper. One of the questions I also had was, how was the student attitude with looping? I sent surveys to 2nd grade students and 4th grade students. The questions I asked were, I liked having the same teacher for 2 years. I liked having the same people in my class for 2 years. I didn't feel nervous or stressed out about school during the 2nd year. I think I learned more and did better in school having the same teacher for 2 years. If I could loop again, I definitely would. And as you can see by the graph, all the statements they overwhelmingly agreed with, and most of the students agreed that looping was a good thing for them. And what was interesting was, if I could loop again, I would. Most students would do that. I also had some parent interviews as to how parents felt about looping. Most of the responses were extremely positive. They felt the teacher knew the child's strengths and weaknesses. The teacher was already familiar with the child in the 2nd year. And an interesting side note is that coming back the 2nd year of a looping class, you just jump right in and go to work on your curriculum. You don't have the adjustment period or the developing the classroom community period. So looping in that sense allows you more teaching time with the children. In the field of education, there are many variables when working with children. Conclusions are difficult to make, and finding the answer to one question leads to many others. This research was no exception. I found that looping children scored better than non-looping children. But why was that? I like to think it was because of the classrooms and the way the school is set up. But there are other questions that could be answered. Did the students in the looping classes score higher because it was a looping class and they chose to be in it? Did the students in the looping classes score higher because the teacher knew the curriculum for 2 years and knew what was coming and was preparing the children? Did the students in looping classes score higher because students and teachers worked together for a longer period of time? What socioeconomic factors are involved in looping and non-looping classrooms? And another interesting thing would be to run that same research today to see if the results are similar to what they were in 2003, 2004, several years ago. The findings in this study suggested that looping seemed to have a positive effect on student achievement. Students who had participated in looping classes consistently scored higher than their students who did not. Students who had participated in 2 loops scored higher than the ones that had participated in 1 loop. Looping students appear to have a positive attitude toward looping in school. Referral rates were lower for students who looped at a primary level. Parents of looping students seemed to like the looping program. The research done by me and the research done by others suggests that looping is good for students, teachers, and parents. I knew it was good, and now I had the data to support that belief. If you have any questions or would like further information on this, please contact me at the email address at the bottom of the screen. Thank you.
Hi, my name is Maggie Peterson. I'm the Director of Pupil Services, and I've been in this position for about 13 years. And I've seen looping be used very effectively in our school district over those years. When asked if it's good for students with disabilities or students that have high abilities, my answer would unequivocally be yes, I think it's very good for them. I think it serves the same purpose for both populations of kids in that because of the relationships developed over time, you don't lose time in meeting their needs right at the beginning of that second year. And I think that the community that's built in a looping classroom is nurturing and makes everybody appreciate the needs and the differences in an inclusive setting, which I think is very important to both kind of ends of the spectrum from meeting students' needs. For example, a student that has an anxiety disorder might have a difficult time transitioning at the beginning of every year, getting to know a different classroom, different rules, some of the hidden curriculum that exists between different classrooms. And when they get to start that second year in a familiar environment, then they don't lose instructional time because of their anxiety. They will be able to hit the ground running and learn at the same pace as their peers. For students that are on the high ability end, when a teacher knows them and their abilities more intimately over a greater period of time, I think that they can stretch their learning and help them continue to grow in every class every day, which is important to their long-term educational potential.
My name is Sherry Adler. My son is a student at SOAR. He was a participant in the looping program here at Northland Pines, and I think it was one of the most wonderful programs that they had. Both my children went through the looping program and they absolutely flourished. I would recommend the looping program to every parent, not only because it's great for the students, it's also a great experience for the parents. We get to know the teacher and the other students in his class. It's more of a family by the end of the second year. Communication with the teacher is much improved when you have a 2-year loop. It's great because the anxiety level for the students and the parents is greatly reduced. You know the teachers, you know everyone in the room, and my son Jake in particular had a very high level of anxiety his first year when it came to doing presentations, where he would literally get sick. By the end of the second year, he was up in front of the class doing his presentations and doing them quite well.
Hello, my name is Jacob Klopp, and I'm from Soar in Land O'Lakes, and I was a participant in the looping program in 4th grade and 3rd grade, and I absolutely loved it. In the first year, I was a little anxious in my presentations and speaking in front of the class, but by the second year, I was loving doing my presentations and speaking poetically in front of the class, and I loved how I got to know the teacher and my classmates by the end of the year, and I think it would be easier for the teacher too in the looping program because she knows who works better together and who doesn't work very well together, and I had a really fun time there. The only part I really didn't like about the looping program is letting the teachers go to another grade, because you get to know them for 2 years and you get to know them better, and you just miss them more.
Hi, my name is Tami Davis, and this is my first year in the 2nd and 3rd grade looping position here at Eagle River Elementary. I am loving every single moment of this. I was a 4th grade teacher before this, and this is the lowest grade level I've ever taught. However, knowing that I get to teach these kids for another year and an additional curriculum is just amazing to me, thinking about everything that they have learning. When I first got my students, to be honest, it was a little trepidation, just because I knew that I had these students for 2 years. But I've completely and utterly fallen in love with them, because I know that if there is some skill or something going on that they need practice on, we're going to work on it for 2 years. I know my students. Being a looping teacher has been really incredible, simply because I know exactly what my students have learned this year. Not just in science and social studies, but I know where their base level of reading is. I know what their writing is. So for next year in 3rd grade, we can just start right into curriculum. I truly anticipate a very easy transition into 3rd grade, and normally there's about a month and a half of a honeymoon period where you teach them the rules and the regulations and how you kind of work as a teacher. In looping, you don't have to do that. They know your expectations and they jump right back into it. This is my first year in the loop, so I will get back to you about whether or not that's truly as smooth as I've seen, but what I have seen from other looping teachers is that the first week of school, they're doing true curriculum. They're jumping right back into science and social studies. They're jumping right back into where they left off in the spring. So I'm really looking forward to just being able to just go with my students. One thing that I've truly enjoyed this year, knowing that I have those 2nd graders for 3rd grade, we have gone so much more in depth with some of these lessons. Instead of just learning about the parts of plants, we've already started learning about how these different parts interact with each other and what it means, and really what I'm thinking in the back of my head, okay, I'm laying the foundation for this lesson I'm going to teach in 3rd grade. Oh, planets and stars and myths. Oh, we're going to just introduce it here in 2nd grade, because I know in 3rd grade we're going to go into a real detailed study about each planet. I can do that as a looping teacher. And what's a great part about that is that in 3rd grade, they can't tell me, we didn't learn this last year. I know you did. So I'm very much looking forward to my 2nd year in the loop, and it's just an incredible program. In organizing my classroom for this new loop, I really thought hard about what I wanted to include. Not just what posters, but also what exact things I wanted my students to work with. So normally in 1 year you think about, oh, I might be using this stuff in math. Well, because it's a 2-3 loop, I already have some 3rd grade posters up because I want to give them exposure to those new topics that they will be covering next year. So essentially, even though it's a 2-3 loop, it's very blended. With communicating with parents, it's really important to know that you have them for 2 years. So you need to be able to have open communication and honest communication. With that being said, you also truly have to think about what you are saying to those parents because you have them for 2 years. It's very, very important to establish a good relationship. One thing I would definitely advocate is calling home, communicating home when there's good things to report. Start off a positive relationship with your parents, and that will and should continue for another year. I very much anticipate a good experience with my parents, and what I've had so far has been very rewarding. I would highly suggest looping for any teacher. You do have to learn new curriculum. However, once you kind of have an idea of that, the higher curriculum, for example, my 3rd grade curriculum, I worked that into my 2nd grade. So it doesn't feel like it's as hard of work as you'd think. It's very rewarding, and I would highly suggest it for anyone who'd like to try it.
My name is Patricia Darr. I am teaching 1st grade this year, and I taught this class last year in kindergarten, so I'm a K1 looping teacher. Looping, I feel that has both positives and negatives to it. The positives, for the 2nd year especially, the students aren't as nervous to come to school. They already know me, they already know each other, so that is a lot easier for them to come to 1st grade. I also feel that I don't have to spend as much time teaching the routines and the procedures that 2nd year because they already know them, and it goes a lot smoother at the beginning of that year. Another thing that I love very much for looping is that you get to see growth of 2 years, where most of the teachers only get to see that 1-year growth. And when you look from the beginning of, for my instance, kindergarten to the end of 1st grade, it is amazing how much that they have grown, and you can feel such a sense of pride because you were a part of that growth. Some of the negatives that I feel for looping, I worry sometimes that the students aren't getting exposed to different styles of teaching, even though I try. I know as a teacher I tend to lean certain ways for teaching, so sometimes that's a concern of mine. Also, some groups don't necessarily mesh very well together, and knowing that they have to come back for a 2nd year if that group isn't working well together, it makes it difficult sometimes. Even when you make adjustments and stuff, some groups just don't get along very well. And as a teacher, I found a negative is that if you do get a very challenging group, I'm saying behavior-wise, it can be very straining, and you know that you have them the 2nd year, so it can be difficult sometimes knowing that you're going to have a whole nother year with that same group. One thing that I really did love about looping this year was at the start of 1st grade, I knew sort of where my kids were right from the beginning of the year, and with just a few assessments and looking at their growth, I was able to place my kids in different section reading groups probably about 3 to 4 weeks sooner than the other 1st grade teachers, only because I already knew pretty much where they were. And then I only had to do small tweaks and changes where a lot of the other teachers had to start out brand new. They didn't know where the kids were at all, and so it went really smooth for me, and I was able to start doing our centers and rotations a lot sooner. Thinking of looping next year and going back to kindergarten, I don't necessarily think that I would do anything different. However, I'm going to make it a point especially to get those procedures and routines down and not let up on that at all through the whole year, because then the kids know what you expect and it is a lot smoother. So that is something that I'm definitely going to focus on a little bit harder for kindergarten next year. Would I choose to do looping? I guess I really can't answer a yes or a no on that question. I have had a very positive looping experience where everything just smoothly flowed and the group worked together. But I've also had one of those classes that was very challenging, and it was very straining on me to have them for 2 years. So I can't necessarily say that I wouldn't choose to do it, or would I say that I want to do it all the time. I guess it really depends on the group, and that's a chance that you have to take.
I'm Jacob. I'm a student from, I want to say 7 years ago, from Mrs. Turpin's class. I'm doing this interview for you guys to tell you how good looping was for me. Looping was a really good help to my education. It kept me with the same teacher for 2 years in a row, so she really got to know how to teach me. And overall, it just provided a better teaching experience for her and for the students. I felt that like I was growing a lot better in my studies, and Mrs. Turpin and Mrs. Yagow were really fun teachers to do the looping with. Looping was a pretty positive experience for me, seeing as Mrs. Turpin and Mrs. Yagow were pretty prominent figures in my life during that period of time. They both were able to help me. During that time, I was going to a whole bunch of different helping classes because I had anger management issues, but that doesn't matter. But they were able to help me learn the way I needed to learn. They didn't just teach like a blanket teaching. They really focused on individual students and were able to help them progress the way they needed to progress. And as to whether or not I felt left out because I was a looping student, looping was more fun than I could have ever imagined. If I had just been with one teacher and then switched into another class, I don't think I would have been able to do what I'm doing today.
Hi, my name is Jennah Ludwig. I'm a sophomore here at Northland Pines. I looped with Mrs. Yagow in my 3rd and 4th grade year. I have to say about looping, it's probably one of the best decisions my family and I ever made. Through looping, I was able to get a better personal experience with my teacher and have a really just an amazing time with the one-to-one connectedness with Mrs. Yagow. I was benefited in several ways by giving me a head start on my academic career, showing me what I can do to build upon what was given to me. It enabled me to have a more personal connection with my teacher, which you don't always get in a regular one-year class. And through having 2 years with that teacher, the relationship is just very, very strong. The relationship with the students also in that class grows immensely compared to one-year classes. I grew just amazing friendships in that class that will last a lifetime. And I know I can refer back to those students and to my teacher, Ms. Yagow, throughout my entire academic career with any questions I have or just guidance that I may need that I know that she is willing and happy to give to me, as well as the other students. I don't believe there's any separation I felt from the other students in the classes that I didn't loop with. I was able to go to recess with them. I was able to have lunch with them or have any extracurricular activities, and I didn't feel a lack of connectedness to them. But the relationship, again, I think is most important that I had with Ms. Yagow and with the students was, again, just amplified compared to what I've had in other years. I believe that looping would be a good decision for any student because of the benefits it has. I feel that through looping, any child or student will be able to grow more and see what their ability level is because of a base that they're connected to for those 2 years. You can see how you grow more efficiently rather than changing so often every year. You just have a stronger foothold, I would say. For any student that is curious about looping, I know that those teachers are willing to talk to you and to grow that relationship with you even before you're in that class. They are just amazing, and I feel I've grown immensely from it.
Hi, my name is Duane Frey. I'm a retired principal with the Northland Pines School District. I've been asked to give a little presentation on the administrative end of starting looping. Back in '98, a teacher approached me that's, regardless of what you see up here, that's 1998. A teacher approached me concerning looping, and that was Mrs. Yagow. And also interested at the time was Miss Turpin, and they came and talked to me about another avenue of education they thought might be interesting for the kids, and that was looping, and I thought it was a good idea. The teachers attended seminars on looping. I went to a Jim Grant seminar on multi-age and looping, which was very informative, and if you've ever been to a Jim Grant seminar, they're also very entertaining. I liked the idea. Got together with Mrs. Yagow, Miss Turpin. We talked about what that would look like. 2 other teachers came on board. We were looking then at doing a first and second grade loop and a third and fourth grade loop. And how were we going to implement this? So we got together, we developed a plan, came up with an idea on sharing the pros and cons of looping with teachers. We presented that to Mrs. Cornelius, who was the superintendent at the time. She was very supportive. We did a presentation with the school board. They were very supportive. We obviously shared the information with staff, and I could say quite honestly that it wasn't a very positive reception. And I think that's due more to change, because there wasn't a lot of change going on in the building. Prior to my arrival, we started a all-day kindergarten, but then this came up, and it ruffled a few feathers, but we worked through that, and obviously the program has been a big success because it's still going at Eagle River Elementary. One of the concerns as an administrator was, what if the teachers got a room that we would refer to the classroom from hell? What would I do about that? And I told them that if we had to make some adjustments with students to make it work, I would do that. I did ask teachers for some commitment to stay with it, because it's not something you can do and get out of it right away. We also told parents that if their student was starting a loop and for some reason that first year didn't work very well, they could opt out of it. Another thing that came up, I was a little worried in the beginning on enrollment of it, if parents would want to be involved in it. We held an informational meeting at night, explained it, and the teachers explained what they were going to do. And lo and behold, the early enrollment was not a problem. One of the issues other teachers had was they were worried about a looping room being an elite room, and that maybe the looping teachers would be treated differently, and that was not the case. We tried to keep the rooms equitable, boy-girl ratio, student abilities, special ed students. We tried our best. The looping teachers were very receptive with that idea. Then another problem that we had to worry about was every school goes through this. In August, you get 8 new kids move in a grade. And I had to give looping teachers new students, even though they would be in a grade that was in the second year of the loop, they would have to take new students too. They were very receptive of that also, and we made that work, and things moved quite smoothly. It continues to be a popular program in the district, so it is well worthwhile for kids and for parents. To start it for money, there really wasn't a lot of money involved to get it going, and I made sure that over the years money for all classrooms was equitable, so nobody was treated any differently. But the big thing is the quality of the teachers in the loop, and I can honestly say our looping teachers do a wonderful job, evidenced with Ms. Turpin and Mrs. Yagow continuing the tradition of looping. Very strong teachers, very child-oriented teachers, and very innovative. And I'm sure you'll see in the in-service they'll do some of the things that they've done to make it work. I want to thank Ms. Turpin, Mrs. Yagow, for inviting me to do this. I believe in it. It's a good program, and I hope this breathtaking administrative review has helped. Thank you.
My name is Tony Duffek. I'm the principal of Eagle River Elementary School. This is my first year in the building, and actually my first year being principal. I was asked to talk about looping because I've actually had some experience with some looping. I'm a huge advocate of it. So my background with looping, I wasn't necessarily a looping teacher, but I taught in a multi-age classroom. I worked in 6th, 7th, and 8th grade multi-age, so I had 7 6th graders, 7 7th graders, and 7 8th graders. And when the 8th graders graduated, I got 6th graders in, so I had about 21 kids. So I had the same, those 6th graders I would have for 3 years. So multi-age, very similar to looping. They have some similarities, some differences, but still the same philosophy of, the benefits of looping and multi-age I think are very similar. Some of the things that I thought were benefits of having multi-age or looping is, first of all, the relationships you build with the kids. When you have the kids for 2 years, like the teachers we have, they have them for 2 years, they build such good relationships and bonds with those students and the families. And that's the #1 thing I think in education. Once you build the rapport with the students and the families, build that trust, the learning comes easily then after that. So I think that's one of the main things that's really beneficial about looping, is building that relationships and trust with the kids and the families, because you have them for 2 years. Another great aspect of looping is the fact that the year 2, you know where those kids are academically the first day they walk into the classroom. You know, you spend so much time getting used to the kids, knowing where they are academically that first year. When I was teaching, it was like, you know, November, December, you really find out where they are, what their niche is for learning. You start to make progress with them, and then you have to shuffle them on next school year, say goodbye to them for the summer. What's so great about looping is the fact that you get to have them the next year. You know where they are academically, you know how they learn best, and you have that second year to really, really make large gains. The other thing I think is positive about looping is I think some kids nowadays especially don't have a lot of stability in their home life. Or maybe there's kids that are shy, and having looping and having those same kids in their class for 2 years and the same teacher for 2 years, they are allowed to build that trust and that relationship and this sense of family and community within their classroom, which, you know, they might not get in their home life. Like, the kids almost are like brothers and sisters after a while because they've been together so much and they trust each other so much. The teachers asked me to kind of share some things about characteristics that you would need to be a looping teacher. I mean, all teachers are dedicated, but I will be honest, I think being a looping teacher might take more dedication. It might be more challenging for a couple reasons. First of all, you're not teaching the same class, same grade level every single year. So, you know, right now we have a teacher that's 3rd grade right now, and next year she has to do 4th grade. So it's difficult to be rotating curriculum biannually like that. So to keep rotating curriculum, it takes more dedication, it's more challenge. And also, you really have to see the job as a dedication and just a profession where you're willing to go beyond just the classroom. Some teachers, you know, like to have work stay at work, and they might live in a different community and might want to not have as much of a bond with families outside of the school, which is completely fine. I completely understand. But I think looping teachers really need to have that bond with the community, with their students, and with the families. A lot of our looping teachers, you know, will text the parents, we'll give their cell phone numbers to them, we'll talk to them on weekends. We just have really close bond with them, and you have to be willing to kind of break down that barrier of this is my work and my personal life is my personal life. I think a lot of looping teachers really open up their home life basically to families as well too. Some of our teachers even do home visits. So I think those are some characteristics that really make a looping teacher successful. They also asked me to talk about little misconceptions about looping. We've had some parents that have misconceptions about looping. Basically, some think that it's for at-risk students, which it is not. You know, some think that your kid has to be at risk. They need to have some special needs to be able to be in a looping class, and that's not true at all. We also have some parents that think it's a misconception that the other side of it, where they think that privileged kids get looping, and that's really not the case either. Any kid could do good in looping. I think some kids would benefit more from looping, obviously, but you know, every kid learns differently. Every family wants something different from their child's education, and I really think that looping just provides one more option for families, as well as just another option for, you know, kids' learning styles. They also asked me to talk a little bit about what it's like to manage from the principal's perspective. Having looping teachers, like I said, I love it. I'm a huge advocate of it. It does create some more challenges from the administrative side, I will be honest, with scheduling, staffing, as well as class placements. Because we'll have to send letters out in the spring to families and find out who's interested in looping, what kids would be good at looping. We have to talk to teachers about what kids should be in looping. And then we have to create class sections of looping and not looping. And we have to have, you know, kids that obviously, and families that want their kids in looping in there. It also creates a challenge for staffing. So when we have to switch teachers or change teachers from grade level to grade level, we really have to consider who is willing to do looping, who would be good at doing looping. And also, it's just kind of a challenge because, you know, we have teachers we have first grade teachers, but then we have some teachers that loop first and second grade. And then we have some teachers that loop second and third grade. So it just kind of creates a little bit of a challenge. It's nothing too major, but from the administrative perspective, it just takes a little bit more planning, I think, with the administrative side of planning for staffing and student placements. That's pretty much it for me in a nutshell about looping. I'm a huge advocate of it. It can be more challenging, I think, for some staff members to do it, but you know, I think it's worth it because it pays off dividends in students' lives. Some kids need that stability, and it just, you know, it builds those relationships and rapport, which is essential in students and families' education. So I'm a huge advocate of it. So And our teachers here at Northland Pines School District do an amazing job of doing looping. Our traditional classrooms teachers do an amazing job as well. It just provides another option for families and students, and that's what I like about it.
Hi, my name is Paige Richie, and I think looping is a good idea because at the end of the year, when you come back into the next year, you can start with your learning where you ended last year, and it just makes it easier. If you come into the classroom at the end of the first year looping class and you're a brand new student, next year when you come in, you already know the teacher a little bit, so it's easier to do the projects because you already know the teacher a little bit. You can keep in touch over the summer, so you can talk about different things. So next year, what you were talking about, maybe you could do a project on it or something like that. You already know the type of learning style it is, so you kind of know if you'll like it or not, and kind of know what you're headed for next year. But the kids really know the teacher very well because they met him last year, so it's easier for them to just talk to the teacher. And sometimes if you looped for 2 years in a row, well, 4 years in a row, and you're with same certain kids, they can sometimes get annoying, but looping is better for some kids and then not as good for others.
Hello, I'm Ms. Turpin, and I'm teaching 3rd grade this year, the first year of my loop. And I have 3 of my students. We had an assignment to write a spontaneous writing piece, and their topic was, how does it feel to be in a looped classroom? And this is Evelyn, and she will share her essay. And this is Nolan, and this is Jade. Jade, would you like to start?
Yes. Personally, I think being in a looping class is great. I will know where everything is. I get nervous when I meet new teachers, so this is going to be great. I think you're the best teacher I've had so far. I can't wait for 2 years with you. My whole life I wanted to be with a teacher I knew, and now I will.
I enjoy a looping classroom because I get to have my friends 2 years in a row. I'll know what we normally do and what the routine is. I'll know everybody in my classroom. I won't like it because I won't get to know many other people.
I think it will be better because we will already know the teacher and the expectations. I think it will be fun because you might really like the teacher. I think we will get to more because we won't have to introduce ourselves because we already know each other.
Hi, I'm Dr. Mike Richie. I'm the District Administrator for the Northland Pines School District. The students behind me are in the second year of their loop, so they're in 4th grade now, and when they were in 3rd grade, they have the same teacher. And one of the big advantages is just that stability where as a child grows, from day to day and from week to week and month to month, that teacher is with that child for 2 years. And when you look at some academic progress and you look at what the advantages are, it's huge because that teacher really gets to know the student very well. They get to know their strengths, they get to know their weaknesses, they get to really learn a lot about that individual student. And when you go from the end of 3rd grade into 4th grade, when you start that year, again, that classroom teacher has a huge advantage where he or she knows that person inside out because they've spent the whole year in 3rd grade together, and now they're going to do the same thing in 4th grade. So they know exactly where that child left off. Also, over the summer months, we've got teachers that have student contact over the summer months, and again, knowing where they were in 3rd grade and what they're going to do in 4th grade is a big advantage. We have teachers that can really connect with students, especially when they have them for 2 consecutive years. It's not just about what that teacher does with the student in the classroom, it's also about connecting with families. You get to see the teacher working not only with the child but working with the parents, and take parent-teacher conferences, take emails going back and forth. Just that communication, again, is a critical element to why looping is very successful. The student support and engagement is another aspect I want to just hit on for a little bit. And when you talk about different support networks, well, here you have a classroom of students that it's like a family because they are together for 2 years. And so you can see a lot of growth over those 2 years, but you see a lot of different support networks. You see students really bonding with each other for 2 years because to be successful, a looping situation has to have the right culture. And the classroom behind me definitely has the right culture. It's a learned environment from day one, and it's something that, again, when these students come into this room, they know exactly the expectations of the teacher, and it's not just where you will have different expectations in different years. You've got the same expectations, for both years. You look at some educational research, and you look at, reforms, and you look at, what's good for education. The fewer transitions, the better. And you could call a transition going from, one grade level to the next grade level. You can also call a transition going from an elementary school to a middle school or a middle school to a high school. And what looping does is technically it eliminates a transition because although the students are going in this situation from 3rd grade to 4th grade, there is no transition because it's the same group of kids and it's the same teacher. So again, you talk about being prepared and looking at academics, they're ready to go from day one. We talk about time, we talk about how valuable time is for our teachers, and just think of the advantage of a teacher coming into that 2nd year and knowing exactly strengths and weaknesses of everyone in the classroom. So it's really a time-saving opportunity, again, for our teaching staff. And with the time they save, they can really focus on student learning. And again, looping, it's not new, but a number of districts don't offer looping. And what we want to do is we want to provide different learning opportunities for our students. So as we look throughout our district, it could be looping, it could be multi-age, it could be a charter school opportunity, but we try to do things that will really increase our student academics, increase our student participation, give them more opportunities, try to make learning something where they're really looking at how can they enjoy school. At the end of that 2nd year, the growth that we see in our students is amazing. Speaking as an administrator, speaking as a parent of a child that is in a looping classroom, I see this every day. So I have a distinct advantage where I'm very in tune to what's going on in our looping classroom. And I have noticed a huge difference when you look at the students that are in a looping classroom, compare those students to students who are in that traditional classroom. And I guess I need to point out, looping is not for every child. Looping has to be, it has to be the right fit. The family, the parents have to, fully want to participate in looping, because there are some situations where looping may not be good for a child, but if you got the right characteristics, and again, when you sit down with that elementary principal, when you sit down with the looping teachers, when you sit down with the families and parents, and you look at the different learning styles of every individual, it's really nice that we can offer this opportunity. And so I guess one suggestion that I would highly recommend is as different schools try to establish a classroom roster or a list of potential students to be in a looping classroom, I think you need to be careful, and you need to really get everyone's input on the makeup of that class, because again, that class is together for 2 years. So you want the students to be successful, and you do not want to set them up for failure. And there's nothing wrong with saying that a looping situation may not work for a certain child's needs or learning style.